Look out. Are we live or are we on a counter?
Ooh, that is a good question. I think I started it wrong again.
That's okay. I'm on the channel.
I think we're.
It looks like we're live. I
It
see two
looks like we're
people.
live. Yeah.
Dun, dun. What are we gonna do? Okay. Is it focused? What are we talking about, Matt? What is going on? What has happened?
I don't know.
It's
What
been
do
a
you want to
minute.
talk about? It has been.
Well,
We missed last week.
we did in fact miss last week. Are you
We
doing
almost
okay?
missed this
I,
week.
I know you're busy. Yeah, I took some. I think I'm Benylin is what I took. This seems to have worked.
Benelin.
Benylin. I believe that's what
What's that?
it threw down my shirt. Uh, Decongestant, I want to say.
Okay.
I think that's the right term for what I
Okay.
took. Yeah, it seems to have worked. I keep getting
Okay.
like a mucusy kind of thing. That's awful. It makes me cough while I talk. It's
Hmm.
terrible. As long as I don't laugh, so just don't make me laugh. I'll be fine. I mean, you're not that funny in case the audience doesn't realize.
Oh.
It should be okay.
Wow.
Obviously, I can laugh. I didn't die.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Um,
I subscribed to this newsletter from a company called Every based on a podcast
mm,
that I was
hmm
on a couple weeks ago.
Yes.
And not to like fully blow my only story this week, but I did read it and I reached out to you to get sort of the whole transcript because I thought it was good. But for the people who aren't subscribed to Every, I think the gist of
Yeah.
this was the big aha moment was the most recent article is talking about somebody who's using it feels like a mixtures of expert kind of approach to a standard large language model. So if you were to have a large language model split its brain into sort of 10 different personas or personalities when you're asking a question, then have it give you feedback on it, I think was the major aha moment. So to
Hmm.
explain how it worked basically is that imagine if you're starting a standard chat session with an LLM and you say, hey,
Mm-hmm.
can you come up with 10 personas as people who might be maybe on this team or might be regular, let's say, viewers of this podcast and ask them to give you feedback on something? That for me was kind of an aha moment. And I was able to
Hmm.
take that and kind of work with it quite a bit to be able to, I don't want to say mixtures of experts because in this case they're not. Maybe mixture
Right.
of opinion might be more of it, or maybe
Hmm.
mixture of personas, which is what it was. Before I go any further, though, I should probably quote the person properly because this was, in fact, not my idea, but somebody else. And it looks like they're a prompt engineer who's been doing this for a while. And I think Every was kind of maybe working off something that they saw on Twitter, I believe. But
Mm-hmm.
basically, it was personas of thoughts is what they were talking about. So that persona of thought is kind of how do I say this? Like a way of going through and saying, hey, what would this persona think of this, or what would that persona
Right.
think of this? So that the person's name is Michael Taylor, and it's part of his series, also true for humans, which I guess I'd recommend because this is quite good. And the title was I asked 100 AI agents to judge an advertisement. And the advertisement they were talking about was Jaguar's very simplistic kind of
Mm-hmm.
advertisement that came out recently. And the question was more about should this brand stay with its like past kind of principles, so like don't compete with other people or what have you,
Right.
or should it be something that's a little bit newer, that kind of thing. And then it the prompt engineer asked it to come up with 100 AI agents, which I think is maybe a bit much. But the crux of the workflow was instead of just asking for opinions of the LLM, perhaps you could say, now imagine you're like a school teacher in your mid 40s, that kind of thing, and you drive this kind of car. What would you think of Jaguar? And if they're maybe a
Hmm.
Hyundai driver, perhaps it doesn't matter to them at all. Like luxury is not something that they come up with. Sorry for the Hyundai drivers. I was just picking an example. But in terms of like the different brand associations with different cars, is what I thought was interesting that the LLM came
Mm-hmm.
up with. On top of being able to put on that sort of hat, just to say like, hey, I'm the school teacher for this one. This is what I think. That kind of thing was yeah really interesting to me, and I was able to go through a couple examples. We're going through OKR period right now at Datadog. Again, my opinion does not represent my company, but I was trying
Hmm.
to going through this, and I don't use AI to do my job or anything like that. But I was thinking more along the lines of we're shifting a little bit this year in how can I say this in the world of DevRel. I think authenticity is kind of one of those key things, and I think this year in terms of like not we sorry I'm shifting in terms of ways that I want to talk about things. And the question was like, hey, if I was on a team of DevRel engineers who were really good, really experienced, maybe Matt Williams is on that team, what would these people think of my new plan, kind of thing? And I just went through some sort of stuff and said like, hey, what about this? What about that? What would you plan? And I was working with Claude. I think
Hmm.
it was 3.5 Sonnet is what I had open, just because the article was also using Claude as well. And I was beyond impressed with one the context window. Just how much context you can get from
Hmm.
Claude was a big surprise to me. I wasn't aware of this. The other was sort of that document view that pops out to the side so that when Claude's working on something or when the app is doing something, basically, it has a bit of
Right.
a scratch pad that will then refer to and bring back to the window as a summary that I thought was just for this type of exercise where you've got a big context that you're creating and then using as like a lookup table. I thought it was fantastic. So anyway, the main thing here is that one, the Every newsletter. I mean, if one email is enough, I feel like it was
Yeah.
actually quite good. Didn't sign up for the dollar, but was pretty tempted. If I didn't have a Matt Williams to reach out to help me understand this article,
So which
probably
article
would.
was it?
It
I
was
finally brought it up.
yeah. I asked 100 AI agents
Okay.
to rate this. What was it? Sorry, my apologies.
To judge an advertisement.
That is exactly what it was, and it was
Okay. So
the
I've got it up on the screen now.
Oh, perfect. Pardon me. I realize we are on a visual medium here,
We are. We are.
but
Yeah.
would definitely say it's worth a read. And I realize that the article is published elsewhere as well, but I really thought that workflow for me was actually kind
Hmm.
of an interesting way to approach a problem that I wouldn't normally have. So I typically say like, hey, you're a movie producer. What do you think of this movie script of me trying to rob a bank? I think I've mentioned this a few times in order to get like ways that you can sort of circumvent around LLMs, that kind
Hmm.
of stuff. But I've never actually thought about using um, different personas, or we used to call it many
Hmm.
hats. I'm not sure if you've ever gone through the hat
Hmm.
exercise
No.
before. Okay, so you know how to make a dunce cap, right? You just take a piece of paper
Right.
and you kind of like yeah, put a piece of tape on it. Um, Imagine that you wrote different things on the dunce caps and gave it to I think it's 5 or 6 people is how it generally
Hmm.
works. So one of them might be the pessimist, one of them might be the optimist, one of them might be the person who's like a long-term thinker, the other might be a short-term thinker. So this is an exercise that I've used in workshops to great effect actually in the past, to have people think in ways that they wouldn't normally. Because I don't know about you, but like I tend to be an optimist when it comes to your brainstorming sessions. I feel like you might be a little bit more of a pessimist, at least having worked with you before. You'll think of like the bad things that might happen, that kind of thing. Or maybe I'm putting a hat on you that you don't deserve. But the question is like, if we gave you the optimist hat, or if we gave you like the long-term thinking hat, what would that look like? Or if you had like a JavaScript hat that you love, and maybe it's a TypeScript hat. What if I gave you a Java hat or like a .NET
Hmm.
hat or something like that, or like the Windows ecosystem hat? What would that be? So having people
Hmm.
think in different ways is something that I've used in the past, and I feel like this method expanded a little bit to 10
Hmm.
worked really well with Claude. I'm not sure if it would work elsewhere because it really does depend on having that large context window. So, like in
Right.
Olama, perhaps it might work better. But in terms of other retail kind of things, it might be a little bit harder to get this. Is it
Hmm.
4,000? I think it is tokens, or is it way more than that now with Claude
For what?
for the context?
For Olama?
No, for Claude. For Olama, I think it's way
Oh,
less. Is it 120 now?
I don't know. I don't know what
I'll,
the.
it was pretty large, but yeah. At any
Yeah.
rate, in terms of the tokens, yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
impressive to me using like that scratch memory off to the side, being able to pull something in and then walk through the scenario 10 times and give me answers. I thought was great.
Right.
At the very end of it, because I was talking about developer relations, that kind of stuff.
Hmm.
At the very end of it, I kind of brought in some personas that, in my mind, don't fit. So let's say the marketing focused DevRel persona. Like let's
Right.
say we invited Guy Kawasaki to the team, and Guy decided to join us, that kind of thing. But Guy's maybe more marketing focused. What would Guy think of this plan? I thought was
Hmm.
really really cool, and it would just go through it. Or maybe somebody who's more sales focused or partner focused, or perhaps more,
Right.
technical. Just
Yeah.
in terms of different personas that you might have in DevRel. I thought this was fantastic. Like, how should we
So
modify this in order to take into those opinions into account? Sorry,
when
go ahead.
you described it to me,
Yeah.
I didn't read it. But
Oh shoot!
when you described it
Hopefully
to
that
me,
explanation made sense.
well, yeah, I mean, when you described it to me, personas, I was just I instantly went to personas that are used for, what are the personas you're building a product for?
Right, which is
Um,
probably a good idea, right? Yeah,
right, and we've done
as well.
that. We did that at Infra, and then later on when we changed
Right,
to Olama,
right.
um, and the CTO of the company, Patrick, he he was really into doing this persona exercise, and I remember we all were sitting together. We had rented a house, a really cool house in uh, Tiburon,
Nice.
and it was. And we sat there trying to figure out what are the personas for this infra product
Right.
that never went anywhere. But it's interesting talking
And how
about
long did that
as
take?
you.
Having not gone
Oh,
through this before, apparently it can take a minute.
it. I think we spent. We did it actually twice. Once
Okay.
there, and then another time in Seattle when we had pivoted to SSH.
Right.
Um, and each time, I think the second time we did it faster because we kind of knew what to do. But the
Right.
first time, I would say it was like a full day
That sounds about right.
sitting on the couch and in a really cool house. And yeah. But as you described it, it
Right.
reminded me of a product I've seen recently. I
Okay.
can't remember what it's called, but it's a forms, like a feedback service
Hmm.
that provides questions. Can you tell me about what you think of this product? But depending on the type of person that you're sending out this form, it's giving different types of questions that are more targeted to, I think, different personas,
Interesting.
depending on the kind of person you are. Maybe that's kind of role that you're in, or the age, or gender, or whatever else. Maybe ask different questions that take all that into account, which
I'm
sounded
looking
pretty
through some
cool.
and I can't find any, but yeah, that actually sounds really cool.
It had form in the name. I don't know. That's all I remember.
The ones I know are like jot forms.
Yeah, yeah. I
No,
mean, all of those are like
the
you give me a whole
standard
list of
ones, right?
questions,
Yeah.
and we'll ask them. But this
Right.
was you give us a bunch of questions and these different personas, and tell us, for each person that you're sending an email to, what persona they fit in, and then we will ask. We will generate a bunch of other questions that more target those personas, and then send them, and then serve those out. And it might be I didn't really look into the product much, but I think it could have either been, here are five personas we'll ask, or
Uh-huh.
everybody's a different persona based on
Right.
stuff we find out about them online. Maybe, look at social media to figure out what is the persona this person fits in. And maybe there's, an infinite number of personas.
Right. That yeah, that totally makes sense. Like with
And
an
then, I
infinite
mean, the
number of
challenge then is how do you bring that all back together into something
yeah,
that's useful?
yeah.
And I think
That's
that's their
really cool.
magic sauce.
Yeah, see, I find this amazing, and that was my first inclination because it did say personas. So my first thought was like, IT admin or maybe somebody with 30 years experience, or perhaps you got like a front end developer, that kind of thing. And I think that would make sense for some of the content that I make on a regular basis that is more like long lived, I guess.
Hmm.
So let's say, for example, what would this person think, and then I could like tailor it so it hits a few audiences or something like that. What I thought was interesting was more kind of simulating like I was trying to simulate like coworkers basically, or DevRel at some fictional company, mostly because I was on the Claude free thing, and I just didn't want to put any like names or anything like that in there. So I just
Right.
created like a fictional company and kind of went through like a standard DevRel
Mm.
program. So today it's 2025. Like, what would the OKRs for a DevRel program be at this company? Like this fictional company kind of thing. And
Right.
then from there, using the personas that we have, what would they think of the OKRs? And then adding in different personas to see what they would add or remove from them, or what might be more important. The other that I thought was interesting was so the question I had was, should we? weigh or like have half weights for some of these opinions? Should we
Hmm.
value them more than others if someone has more opinion? And the good answer that I thought was given back was it actually depends on the question. So in some questions, yeah, maybe you would weigh them more. In some questions, you may weigh them less. So if you get somebody who's more marketing focused, perhaps on the marketing questions, and like maybe that's more interesting to them. So perhaps we
Hmm.
listen to them a little bit more because they've got the years of experience. So they've been doing some of this stuff recently because of recent
Right.
experience. We should weigh it, which I thought was like fairly cogent as a response. Like that's actually
Right.
this is a common thing that you might do on a regular basis. Actually, when you're going around the room collecting opinions, you may think like, oh, actually, I'll treat Matt's answers with a grain of salt. He doesn't really know what he's talking about, kind of thing. But Matt actually know what he's talking about for like half of these things, and maybe
Right.
for some of them, perhaps we should listen to him, but not weigh it as much without discounting it completely. Maybe we should listen to Matt once in a while. I don't know. Just the thought.
Yeah.
Anyways, thank you
So
very much. So
yeah.
yeah, I guess a
So
resounding recommendation for at least this blog post from Every. I thought was pretty good.
yeah, I mean, it's I've really enjoyed Every. It's
Mm-hmm.
Every the URL is every.to. Um, and it, as I say, it's a newsletter, but they also work on a number of tools. I think they've hired out some developers to build different tools for different purposes, and one of them is called Lex,
Right.
which does a it's a really great integration with whichever online AI model you want to use, and then and just really doing prompts really nicely, and integrated in, and I've written a couple of videos that haven't actually been made because I ended up not liking what I was doing with it, but a few posts, a few videos, as well as a blog post that I really did like, and it was exactly what I wanted to say, just better.
Great.
And
Funnier.
yeah, a little bit of that.
I'm teasing you. Sometimes you can add jovial or whatever, but it actually will
Yeah,
be like funny, but not too funny, which is nice.
yeah, and
That's cool.
so that's Lex. There's also this Cora thing, which I haven't really played with. That kind of
How do you spell
summarizes
Cora? Because
email.
okay, because I do know
C
Alpha Cora, but I'm not a fan.
Cora.
Gotcha.
So I don't know anything about it
Oh, right. Sorry, from Every. My apologies.
from
Right.
Evie.
I,
And
and
then they also have what are the others? Spiral, which is for reformatting your text. So if you've got a blog post, then reformat it as a bunch of shorts and reformat it as or rewrite it as a YouTube script and also as a Twitter thread or as whatever else you want to do. So take that existing content, but tweak it for other purposes.
very
And then
cool.
Sparkle, oh yeah, is the one that kind of organizes your file system somehow.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm still haven't let loose any AI on the operating system. But have you
Yeah.
seen the file system tree RPG? I'll try to think of. I'll figure out the name in a moment here. But imagine the root of your file system is home, like your starting spot in a dungeon,
Uh huh.
and every folder that you traverse into would may or may not have enemies. And you know how some of your folders, like maybe you're on Windows and you're under documents and settings, applications, you're pretty deep in the weeds, like you're all the way down to the Google Chrome cache kind of thing.
Right.
To get to that end level, that end dungeon, you may need to combat quite a bit of fictional enemies all the way through, and it's random as you go through it, and your character will develop. It's really
Right.
neat. But you start with your file system. Obviously, I'm not a big fan of like whatever my there's a lot of stuff in my file system is all I'm getting around. Like who knows what folders are in
Yeah.
there depending on the computer that I'm on. So I've yet to try this, but I do want to start up a VM to like kind of give it a kick because it does sound kind of fun. But I think it's called
Right.
File System RPG.
Hmm.
It just sounds like a pretty interesting kind of way to take something that's maybe I think it's called RPG CLI is the name of it, but it's a
Okay.
way of taking something that's common to all of us, which is like a file system that doesn't matter in
Right.
the operating system, something that we're also familiar with, which is like RPG, and sort of just like smashing them together in a way that you wouldn't think would work, but actually does look pretty interesting. I'll see if I can put a link in the chat here, but it's basically it's your file system as a dungeon is how they
Huh.
They say here. I just put a link in there. So that's the Y Combinator article, but basically it's what is it called? Yeah, RPG CLI on RPG-CLI on GitHub. It's very interesting. But I think we're in that spot now where we can like start to come up with things that are a little bit more interesting than just
Right.
your standard kind of app. And I think this is where I don't know, where I feel like this is an inflection point, maybe is what I'm trying to say, where we can use things that are boring in fun ways and solve boring problems in ways that are novel.
Right.
Yeah, that's So that's
I
RPG CLI.
I'm trying to find an interview I saw
Yeah.
pretty recently with somebody who was a developer and is now a VC.
Okay.
And he was talking about how he uses Claude and Claude computer use
Oh.
and on his Mac. So some tweaks you have to do to get it to work on a Mac.
Right.
And God, I cannot. It's not coming up in history because I can't remember what it was titled.
Hmm.
But
It works on a VM, right? So presumably you could
yeah,
VNC to a Mac from there, but I don't
yeah,
know.
and this
Is there a
guy got
secure way
it
of doing things?
to not you just run it directly on a Mac,
Oh, nice.
not with. Apparently, there was just like a couple little tweaks in the startup that you need to do,
Gotcha.
but with doing it on a VM, you're a little bit more protected. And so it's like,
Right.
don't do this, but this is how I do it.
Well, there used to be a really easy way of running OS 10 VMs on OS 10 and in ARM space. It's not necessarily that simple anymore.
Yeah, God, I cannot figure out
But I
what
do
that
miss the
was.
days of what was it? I think it was VMware Workstation would allow you to install an operating system based on the recovery partition on your Mac, which is actually pretty neat. So it would
Oh yeah, yeah, okay,
mount the recovery partition and then start new VMs from you from that
right,
install media. Because getting the install media is jumping through hoops basically these days
yeah,
with Apple. That's very cool. Yeah, definitely. If you find it, send it my way. I'm super interested in this area, like the robotic process
yeah.
automation kind of area. I feel like is another like stepping stone basically.
It might have been uh, Greg Camrad. Camrad. So this video.
Checking
So
it out.
talk with who is this guy? Deed Bagiatas from Menlo VC.
Hmm.
And so it's interesting. There's the bit at the beginning where it's just his take on different AI topics and the
Right.
people that come to him for for investments and that type of stuff. But then kind of the second half is okay. Here's how I'm using Claude computer use on my Mac directly, and here's some of the tweaks you need to do. But look at the GitHub for more because if I say it here, it'll get delisted.
Right. Right.
But and then here's some of the things you can do with it, and it's just a really. It was one of the best kind of examples of hey, I'm a kind of a very technical person, and here's how
Right.
I actually use this stuff every day, and it was
That's cool.
really really cool.
I like that. Yeah, I
So
think honestly a lot of the value out of talking to Matt Williams is like how do you use stuff every day. I do get a lot out of that, and I feel like these kind of like the real world use. When the rubber
yeah,
meets the
yeah,
road. Yeah, this is what I want to know about for sure.
and this guy, he's got a number of other videos that seem to be pretty good in that like how different people are actually using this stuff. So definitely
Very
worth
cool.
checking out.
And
Greg
it's
Camrad.
Kamrad Kamradt.
That's it.
Okay, I
Data
believe I did find
Independent
it.
is the name of the Data Independent is the his account name.
Very cool. And I feel like I found the GitHub repo as well, which is pretty easy to
Okay.
find. Cloud
Yeah.
computer use. I think if you just type that into GitHub, you'll find it pretty quickly. But
Yeah.
that is very interesting to me to see how people are actually using things on a daily
Yeah.
basis as like an actual kind of assistant. I think that's way more interesting. What else is new?
You told me that you are disappointed with something.
I definitely am. Okay, context. So last episode we were talking about your Shinobi Ultra, I believe is the
No, no, no.
name.
It's not Shinobi. It's Ninja Ultra.
Ninja Ultra. My apologies. My apologies. Shinobi's the monitor, Ninja's the recorder, or
I
is it
think
just the
so.
size? Okay.
Or
All right. So
maybe it's just a 5 inch versus 7 inch.
so so step one, and I realize this is for YouTube. I'll show you the box. I think that's focused. I find their branding very cringy,
Yeah.
incredibly cringy. So for those of you listening to the audio, this is like a cartoon drawing of a ninja punching for some reason with an Atomos icon on their forehead. Just doesn't just didn't make a lot of sense for me in terms of branding. Yeah, that's okay. I'm
It.
not showing
This
off his
is
Ultra, which is way more professional looking to me.
this is a little bit better, but the I think this is the original color of the box, but it's kind of this kind of like
Oh, it looks
faded.
yellowed. Yeah,
It looks like it's been sitting in a
right,
warehouse for a long time, but I
right.
think it's actually the color it's supposed to be. It's supposed to look awful.
Oh, it's interesting. And I will say, like, opening the box is a nice, satisfying like section to it. You know, the inside inserts are all like it's really cool. Um, uh, first actual gripe here is that it didn't come with an HDMI cable, which should not matter. Not a
Right.
big deal. I will say the Atomos HDMI cables are very nice. Having purchased one for 100 Canadian dollars, which is probably about 70 US dollars,
Uh-huh.
for a coiled cable, and I'm sure I could get like a
Oh,
converter
okay.
one or something
Nice.
like much cheaper. They are available retail in most camera shops. It's actually pretty
Hmm.
neat. So Atomos is a pretty big brand, so you can go
Right.
around and get little parts. These ones aren't locking, but a lot of them do have little
Hmm.
locking tabs on them. It's super cool. Um, I feel like the HDMI cable should have came with the device. I
Right.
didn't realize that you probably want a coiled cable because it depends on the length and it can be a big
Hmm.
problem. The other is this device, and some of this is the MPF battery, but like this device is fairly large with an MPF battery on it. And I feel like so USB PD is probably what I'll
that
end up powering it with.
that looks bigger than the Ninja.
I was about to say I feel like it is in fact bigger than the Ninja. So if I take the battery off of it, and again for those of you not watching the video, I'm just showing this like device with
Bring it close to the center. Okay.
a whole bunch of
Oh,
cables
okay.
coming out of it. It's pretty interesting.
Okay.
Um, I feel like so they labeled the video import as video out. Um, pretty sure that's that's not what that is. But
Hmm.
anyway, so they've got HDMI in and video out is actually the like the like power cable. It's not actually.
Hmm.
Anyway, it's like the USB cable goes into video. But anyway,
Hmm.
ignoring this, I feel like this device is pretty good because the quality that you get off of this is second to none. I've never seen
Oh yeah.
video quality this stunning in my life,
Yeah.
and I was just recording uh, HEVC or X265 or something like
Hmm.
that, or H265. It was phenomenal. White balance was
Yeah.
incorrect. The focus was
Yeah.
off, but there was just so much detail in a 4K
Yeah.
24p video shot in that resolution. Even just looking at my phone. The other thing is, as soon as you recorded it, it's on your phone already, and it's
Right.
shareable. Like it's in a ready state to go, which is
Yeah.
really nice. So Matt, if I was taking a video of you, I could get you to hand me your phone, assuming it's
Hmm.
USB-C, and I could record on mine as well as yours as like a proxy that you could
Oh,
then
okay.
take with you, which is like really, really
Hmm.
interesting, at least in terms of interviews and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Like
Yeah.
it's actually quite handy. So that part's pretty cool. The other thing that I thought was really neat, and I haven't signed up yet, but you can sign up to Atomos and you can stream directly from the phone app, which I find interesting. Also, not a fan of having multiple accounts. I think DJI
Yeah.
got some flack recently for forcing you to sign up to just
Yeah.
make their gimbals work and stuff like that. But I do feel like that's pretty interesting functionality. So, like, one of the problems
Yeah.
we have in the podcast is like, if I'm traveling, how do I set this
Yeah.
up and stream from a hotel? And it'll work with LTE, which is actually really, really
Hmm.
interesting, at least in the US, because I find in Canada the data plans aren't that great. But in the US, I can
Right.
get an unlimited LTE plan pretty, or
Yeah.
4G, 5G plan pretty cheaply, and then
Yeah.
stream directly from there. Which I anyway thought all this was incredible, especially HEVC because it's a smaller codec. It means that
Right.
streaming to the cloud is totally acceptable. But I feel like what I should have actually gotten is the Ultra, something that's
Yeah.
all in one device kind of thing. It's all there. Another use that I realized of this, it's completely different than what it's meant for, but I guess I didn't realize that you can just straight up record videos on your iPhone with a USB HDMI input adapter, which means that
Mm-hmm.
you can record pretty much any device that's got HDMI on it, that's a lot of devices actually.
Oh.
Just as like a recorder, it can just be used as a recorder, and in fact, your
Oh yeah.
device
Of
as
course.
well
Yeah.
can be just a portable battery
Yeah.
powered recorder.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying this is gonna solve all the problems, but in some cases, like if you're using PS5 or something like that, and you want to
Right.
record your gameplay,
Right.
it's actually pretty interesting. So anyway,
Yeah.
I haven't used all the bells and whistles. Oh, the other thing is it doesn't come with a hot shoe adapter. I'll show the one that I've got here, but like
Oh,
some of
okay.
these things, I feel like they're necessary for just mounting
Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
on your camera. But anyway, I digress. Long and short, I thought it was really good. I
Mm-hmm.
do feel like the firmware update took 4 tries to make happen, and
Oh.
it legitimately would not work until I got the firmware update to work. So I think
Right.
that part needed some help. I'm not sure what it was in terms of the waiting or something like that, but I
Right.
watched it. I feel like it was just a timeout thing. Like, I put 5 sleeps
Mm-hmm.
in, and I should have put a 6. It's one of those stupid timing things because it doesn't
Yeah.
actually. It pulls the device on a regular basis and then
Uh-huh.
times out, as opposed to
Yeah.
waiting for a signal back from it and then
Right.
realizing that.
Right.
Anyway, it's not the end of the world, but it could have been better. The documentation is not great. Since it's not a
Documentation
popular,
is terrible.
minimal is what I'd say. With I think that's a
So
charitable review of
is
the
there
documentation.
documentation for the phone thing? Is
As long as you speak English and German, there absolutely is. It's 4
okay.
pages and tells you to plug in all the cables and turn on the app. That
Well,
it's
so that's better because
okay.
there is no documentation for the Ninja Ultra.
Wow.
For the current version of the Ninja, there is no documentation.
Now listen, I'm no DevRel expert, but I feel like you got to have documentation.
There is documentation for the previous hardware setup,
Yep.
but there's no document that says here's what's different. So you
Ah,
can read that, and here's what's different,
yeah,
and
indeed, yeah.
what little you can find assumes you already know what all the things do. Assume that you're already
Right.
familiar with this world.
Right. I did notice that in some of the dropping of terminology and stuff like that.
Yeah,
They assume you're familiar with it. And for the most
yeah,
part I was. I think there was there was one thing that I hadn't heard of before kind of thing.
yeah,
But even just talking
but
about X265 and
yeah.
HEVC, like a lot of people aren't going to know what this means.
No,
And I think they covered it in battery hours. The playback was like it was like instead of miles per gallon, it was like gallons per mile. It's like how many batteries do you need in order to record 11
right.
hours or something like that? It was like, it's just backwards. Like, no, this is wrong. You need to
Yeah.
reverse these units so it makes sense to a normal person. But it was like how many hours could you
Well, I mean
get per
that's
charge
kind of
equivalent?
the way it is in Europe for measuring
Oh,
gas mileage.
oh, it is,
It's not gallons. It's miles per liter.
right?
Wait, miles per gallon? No,
It's got to be
it's
liters per mile,
liters per
liters per
mile.
kilometer. Yeah,
Yeah,
liters per
yeah. It's
kilometer.
that.
Yeah, yeah.
It's like okay, wait. Even though
What they're
all
saying
my
is
gas
on a
was
full
always paid
tank, you can
for
go this
by the
far.
company I worked at, I
Right,
still
right,
had to
right.
like wait. If I want to translate this for other people, how much is gas? And it was always really expensive. It was like $8 a gallon or seven, but it was
Right, right, right.
consistent even when in the U.S. it was fluctuating a lot. For me in Europe, even though it was paid for by somebody else, it was like
Right.
$7-8 a gallon. Of
Yeah,
course, I also had to deal with U.S. dollar to euro conversion to figure this out.
a whole
So
other thing. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Getting your units right is important.
yeah,
I would also say documentation is
yeah,
important.
yeah,
I feel like the labels on the inputs are maybe important because this isn't video out. This is straight up USB out. So
yeah,
let's call a spade a spade. And sometimes your branding is important. So I feel like I didn't show the front. The front is fine. It's
yeah.
kind of cyberpunk, made for kids or something like that.
Hmm.
That the back kind of has some of the documentation
Mm.
on it, which is great because it's also in the documentation. Um, and, but the cringy animation stuff, like even the naming, like Ninja,
Yeah.
Shinobi, I could do without. Just tell me
Yeah, I
what
mean,
it does.
on the Ninja, there's nothing on the out on the back of the box, and there's no paperwork inside the box as to like, here's how to use this thing.
Amazing. Like who does this?
What?
and,
What?
and they are German, right? Atomos is German. They have to be because the documentation is only in English and German.
Oh, okay.
It says Australia, invented in
Oh yeah, yeah.
Australia,
I think
but
so.
the
Yeah.
instructions weren't in Australian. It's so weird.
Hmm.
Sorry, that was a joke.
But this the Ninja. Oh,
Mhm.
what's that? Is spectacular. I love this
That's
thing.
good to hear. That's good to hear. I feel like I'm gonna just end up going out and grabbing one, so I may end up using
Yeah.
this one at home or something like that with a spare iPhone. It is nice. Don't get me wrong. It's just not. I prefer something smaller.
I and I feel like they do such a bad job on marketing.
Right.
I
I
mean,
also noticed
and
that.
yet they do a great job in some things, like getting the word out about
Right.
here's this device, and getting lots of people to use it and show,
Right.
hey, I'm using
Right.
a Atomos Ninja, or whatever on showing that stuff. They do a great job of that, but saying what's in the box, what you're going to get, they do it. I mean, I had to like order this thing, receive it to figure out. Oh, it does work with any hard drive. You can't figure this out without buying
Right.
it and looking. It's like, oh, regular hard drives, they work.
Reddit threads or yeah, watching this podcast maybe.
Oh my god! But
Then now, I will say on the other hand, the retail presence does seem to be second to none. So when I went up to see, like in Canada, who sells them? It's the who's who, all of the people you'd expect to sell this stuff to. And I can walk into. So here we have something called a London Drugs, which would be like a Walgreens, I guess. Imagine if Walgreens sold tech. I mean, I'm sure they do, but like
yeah,
actually had like a healthy tech
yeah,
department. And sure enough, there was some Atomos cables there. There was all types of stuff. It was like
wow,
imagine walking into Walgreens and buying an Atomos HDMI cable. That was the experience, and I was like,
yeah,
this is fantastic, actually.
wow,
And the cable was way like probably I don't know like 5 times overpriced, maybe 6 times
yeah,
overpriced.
yeah,
Like it didn't need to be that expensive at all. That being said, I could go out and get accessories for it, which I feel like that ecosystem's definitely there. Anyway,
yeah,
obviously we're tearing apart a company that we're just starting to get to
yeah,
learn, but I find it interesting what they prioritize. Because when I look
yeah.
at like another company from Australia, if that's where they're from, like Rode, for example,
Mm-hmm.
and Rode's marketing, like way different. I get the
Yeah,
Rode ads, I see a bunch of like paid placement on
right.
YouTube, like when you're looking at Rode devices, they've got great like walkthroughs of like you should use this mic
Yeah,
for that. You should Podcaster Pro, my friend has and loves.
yeah,
Fantastic manual. Like it actually looks like it's got some thickness to it. Like
yep,
different approaches to similar problems, I guess, on
yeah,
the audio side versus the video side.
yeah,
Anyway, not sure we can learn about DevRel here, but I'd say you gotta have documentation,
yeah,
please.
yeah. But I love it. I love it. I mean, it's having this device is probably up with the. I'd say it's had the biggest. I mean, since what you got the table stakes of getting a camera and lights and other things, a microphone, but then the biggest thing to make a difference, an improvement in how not just the output, but the process of
The
getting
workflow,
the
yeah,
output from here to my computer is just so much better
that's cool.
with this. I mean, I don't touch the camera anymore. I
Yeah,
haven't touched the camera in 4 weeks,
wow,
5 weeks.
that is
I mean,
cool.
even turned it off. It's been on for 4 weeks, and yeah. The
That
one
is
thing I
fantastic.
wish I could get working right is a dummy battery which will let me power it off and on remotely.
Right, like an MPF with a switch or something.
So with the GH5 and yeah, GH5, I had that. I could put a dummy battery in and power it off and then power it on from the battery. With the SH5 2X, whatever,
Hmm.
it will turn off, but then if you turn it on, it'll just lights will flash, but it doesn't have enough power to like get over the hump to turn it on. You have
Okay.
to have the power on the battery, turn it off, and then turn it
Oh,
on the
interesting.
camera, and then it'll come on,
Interesting.
which is really frustrating.
Yeah, I could see that. Does
Um,
the camera power from USB? I know some newer ones do.
Power it will power from USB, so I can do it that
Okay.
way.
But does it require a
But
battery? Some require a battery when you
yeah,
do it that way.
yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know, but
I probably can't solve your problem on the
but then I
podcast. I'm
needed
just wondering.
but then I need USB C for output or no for control.
Right.
So it's
Right.
either power or controlling it. That's
Gotcha.
that you can't do both.
Wow. What a mess.
What's that? Okay. Thanks. Bye.
Dog visit time?
Dogs visit. Yeah.
Hi.
So yeah, that's annoying.
That's cool.
Um,
Listen, I've been watching a lot of Landman. Have I mentioned this series to
oh
you
yeah, you
previously?
mentioned it. I haven't touched it yet.
So I felt like I was getting a little bit tired of the show. You know, it's our involving
Yeah.
relationships and love triangles and all that stuff. I gotta say, it's handled pretty well. So I've stuck
Yeah.
through to the end, and I'm still not a fan of, Billy Bob Thornton. I guess is a pretty good actor. Still not a fan of
Yeah.
like maybe the setting or like there's a lot of things you could we're talking about the oil industry here
Right.
obviously, and it felt like there was an ad in season 8 or whatever talking about how we got here to like present day and peak oil and all
Hmm.
that stuff, but leaving that where it is, the writing is phenomenal actually. There's drama, but it's handled well in an adult manner. I feel like they don't hit you over the head with a lot of stuff. It's pretty easy to follow, but at the same time the stakes are high. There's like rational humans in an
Hmm.
irrational environment behaving in ways that you'd expect, but also like things come out of the blue. Anyway, worth watching. At the same time, I'm watching Silo, and I feel like it's going the opposite direction. It's
Hmm.
becoming more and more irrational. It's like not.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe I'm getting tired of one or the other, but yeah,
Yeah.
this is where we are. And I still haven't watched Squid Games. I'm not sure if you or Squid
Oh
Game.
yeah.
Sorry, not sure if you have.
Oh wait, is there a series or wait? No, it was a
Season
series,
two.
right?
Season 2.
Oh, season 2.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. But you're off
And
Netflix, right?
that's on Netflix, right? We don't have
It
it
is on Netflix.
Netflix.
Right. Well, there you go.
Okay.
It's the
Yeah.
Netflix free household.
Well, just because we
I
turn
hear
things
you.
on and off, and
There's too many subscriptions. We
yeah,
recently got rid of
yeah.
BritBox. Have you heard of this before? It's
Oh
like
yeah,
British
yeah,
streaming for Prime, I think, is where you get it.
yeah.
We love watching Would I Lie to You? That series about like when you
Mm-hmm.
pretend to lie. And anyways, really funny.
Right,
Lee
right.
Mack, David Mitchell, yeah, quite good.
I I sometimes watch when I go over to my mother's house. She has Acorn, which is like
Oh,
the
okay. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
competitor to BritBox. I
Yeah.
guess BritBox is BBC in the. Is it
Yeah.
BBC? Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, BBC. And Acorn has a lot of like murder mysteries, that kind of stuff on it, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah,
Okay, that's what I thought. Yeah, I
yeah,
like those UK murder mysteries.
yeah, yeah.
So I do have one recommendation.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
I want to caveat this with I'm not breaking the law. Let me show you this device, and we'll tell you it is. Okay, so I will mention this by name because it's caused quite a stir within the Nintendo community. So this is what's called the MiG Switch. I'm not going to tell you where to buy it, but what it'll do is allow you to make backups of your own Nintendo Switch games.
Ah,
Now, like that all sounds rational, right? I'll
right,
tell you what most people think the problem is going to be going forward. So like, there's nothing stopping people from. There's no Blockbuster anymore, so I don't think you can rent games and copy
right.
them or whatever. But if you were to go to like EB Games
Mm-hmm.
and copy a game that you bought there and sell it back to them, obviously you'd lose some money, whatever. The person purchasing that next game, it could be like the cartridge could be blacklisted or something like that because they've got certificates
Mm.
on them on their own. And the big
Oh
kerfuffle
really?
in the community is whether or not if you're buying a used game that this could be like banned or cause you to be banned or something. So it's
Right.
caused quite a stir. The interesting part for me is it's basically a USB adapter to read cartridges, and you can play them
Mm.
back on Linux if you want to and emulate it. I'm not
Right.
saying you should, or maybe, and I'm not doing this, maybe on your Steam Deck. Again, not saying you should. I thought this through research, but it does seem like an easy way to move your games around. And let's say there's
Right.
a Switch 2 coming out or something like that, and you're worried about it. I don't know. But it is interesting that we're at this point in time of the Switch. And I say this because it seems like we're about to get into a new generation of Switch. And this
Right.
seems like it happens to a lot of consoles. Once the piracy sort of hits a certain level, they're like, "Hey,
Right.
we need a new platform because we're not making enough money anymore." And it feels like that's the pulse that we're at. This has been out
Yeah.
since I think March of last year, so it's not anything
Okay.
new. And again, I'm not recommending that anybody buy this purely for research, but it does
Yeah.
look like a pretty interesting point in the Switch's evolution at this
Yeah.
point in time, where I feel like the Switch 2 is imminent, basically, as
Yeah.
uh, to be announced. And it feels like as of March last year, it seemed like we were rolling into that because it's
Right.
so anyway, that's what I wanted to
I
share.
I haven't touched my Switch in over a year.
Can I tell you what I've been playing on my Switch?
Yeah.
It's called Papers, Please. Have you heard of this game?
No.
Papers, Please simulates like an Eastern European small country that's just opened up their border, and you are like the first border guard.
Uh
It
huh.
starts out really quickly. So I see Matt, and all I get, like, you give me your passport or whatever, and I
Uh
look
huh.
at it, and I approve or deny you, what have you. Um, it gets fairly complicated, and they tell a story through just you at this kiosk. Like, there's no other story element. It's just you at a kiosk and like your interactions with people. But like at the end of each round, which is a day, and sometimes you don't last very many days, it'll let you know like how your uncle's doing, how your wife's doing, how your son's doing, show you that you've got like $10 in your bank account. Like it's kind of harrowing actually, and pretty depressing. But it highly recommend it.
So I've got it on the screen now
And I
from
realize
their
it sounds
website.
incredibly boring. I'm so sorry. It's like muted palette with a lot of browns and reds and things like that.
Yeah.
It's vaguely like USSR kind of or
Uh huh.
CCCP kind of feeling.
Huh.
It's pretty cool. Would recommend it. It's very you can get in and get out really easily. Like it's like a video game
Okay.
snacking kind of game. But yeah, I was
Huh.
playing this, and prior to this, I was playing something called Vampire Survivors, which is also like just a quick pick up and play kind of game. I think that's
So
where I'm at.
Papers, Please first came out
It's
in
really old.
2013
Yeah.
on
It's over 10 years
PC
old.
and PC, Mac, Linux, iOS, Android. It doesn't list the what are we talking about? The what's a Switch?
Oh,
It
maybe
doesn't
it's not
list it on
on
the
Switch.
website.
Oh, sorry, I may be playing this on the Steam Deck. I think I am. I'm getting my
Okay.
handheld confused. This is the age I'm
Right.
at this point in time.
Right.
Sorry, I think I'm playing this on Steam Deck. But
Okay.
yeah, Vampire Survivors is on Switch, and Vampire
Okay.
Survivors is a game where all you do is move the character. So you don't
Hmm.
necessarily shoot or anything like that. You just move them. Yeah. These are
Well,
these are my
I
recommendations: Papers, Please, and Vampire Survivors.
I started playing. Last year,
Hmm.
here's this game called Micro Macro Crime City.
Ooh,
You ever heard of it?
I think you may have mentioned it.
So I did a friend does a game night every few months, and
Hmm.
and
Yeah. This is the one
once
where it gives you a map and you've got to like
gives a
inspect it,
map,
right?
and you've
Yeah.
got each person is shown many times, basically in the past times and future times from when your clue starts. And so you're told to look at the eastern part of the city and whatever, and then the clues go from there. I had a great time playing this, and other people did too. And so a couple weeks ago, I bought it. I remember it's like, oh yeah, that game.
Right.
I really loved it. Let's get it. And so I got it, and we finally had a chance to play it the other day, and I was like really into it, and my wife hates it.
Oh no.
So maybe if I were doing this alone, like if it was, I mean, and you can do it as a single player thing. You're just working
Right.
out the
Because
clues
just
yourself,
yeah, it's kind of
because
like Will Smith a little bit, right?
it is extremely detailed, and
Right.
she's always had problems with her eyes, and
Oh, okay.
so it's just not the
It's more
right. And
frustrating. Yeah.
I it seemed to be harder this time, like a year later, a little bit harder than it was the previous time, and yeah, so it's. And so basically, the game is you're given these 5 or 6 or 7 cards, and you have to figure out, here's this dead cat. It's located in the eastern half of the city. Find the cat, and then where's the murder weapon? So you have to figure out, well, how was the cat murdered, and where is the weapon, and then where did the victim live? So you have to trace back to where the victim lived. What's the motive? So now you have to figure out, well, what along the way happened, and how did the killer flee? So where did the where was the point where he got killed, and then where did the killer go after that? And
Very
I
cool.
thought it was so awesome.
Yeah, it looks like a really
And
cool game. I'll have
yeah,
to make a road trip now. And we can play together. It does look pretty cool.
yeah, yeah,
It's like a Where's Waldo Whodunit edition.
yeah. And it looks like there's extra content. So maybe if you
Yeah, this
have the
showdown. Yeah,
game, then you can get extra puzzles.
very neat. You can add on to it.
So oh yeah, cool.
Awesome. I think that's it in terms of checkouts. Other than that, I'm in the market for another pair of SE 2015s or 215s. You know, the Sennheiser headset.
Oh yeah.
That's about it. That's all I got for you.
Yeah.
Nothing on the audio file front.
Yeah, I last week uh, last week I did a video that was about fine tuning, kind of general tips and tricks to keep in mind when doing fine tuning of models.
Yeah.
And it was a longer video. It was
Okay.
17 minutes long. It was a script that I wrote using Lex. So
Okay.
that really helped me out, like kind of, okay, this section is only 2 minutes. Help me flesh it out a bit better. And it gave,
Right.
these really great analogies. Like I never would have thought of doing that. And
Oh, that's powerful.
a
Okay.
few people commented saying the analogies were really helpful. Thanks for that. It's like,
Ah.
great.
Ah.
So, yeah, so it was longer. And a few days earlier, I had gone through and kind of tweaked the audio settings.
Right.
And then I'd record this thing. And I had so many problems with recording. Well, first off, I forgot to turn on the lights back here, which I've
Okay.
done again. And so I noticed that after I think the first problem was,
I think this looks okay, by the way, in terms of the darker
yeah,
background. It looks
yeah.
fine.
I had forgotten something else, and so I re-record it, and then I,
Mhm.
forgotten. I did realize I did something else stupid. I think I had the door open,
You're
so it was a
describing my
little extra
day-to-day
noise.
process. Yeah.
And so I do it over again, and then
Yep.
I see the lights, and it's like,
Yep.
oh, fine. So I do it over again, and this time I notice I didn't actually press record. And so I do it over again, and I probably recorded this 17-minute long thing, which of course has some mistakes in the middle, so it's 20 minutes or
Hours.
24
Yeah.
minutes.
Yeah.
And I finally get it upstairs to start editing it, and I listen to it like, the audio is terrible, because I'm like clipping, and it's like, oh man. And so I come back down and tweak the settings a bit more, turn it down just a little bit, and record, and it was perfect, almost perfect. It was pretty
Yeah.
perfect. Yeah, it took probably about 7 or 8 tries to get it, and so 17 minutes. That was 4 hours, 3-4 hours of recording just to get it recorded. And usually, I mean, a recording, if it's a 10-minute video, it takes me about 12 minutes to record because everything's all set up. I don't have to do anything. I just press the button, start recording. Everything's already on the teleprompter because I do that upstairs, and it's just perfect. I just come in, turn on the lights, go, record, stop, and take the sled out, take it upstairs, and I'm out of here.
Sounds amazing.
So
Except for
it's
the retries.
except for the retries, yeah.
For the retries. Have you tried? I think I've recommended this before. Descript or Descript?
I did
'Cause that's how I
only
cheat. Because I just like
yeah
micro record them and shove them all together. It's
yeah
awful.
yeah because Descript is a Y Combinator company,
Oh shoot.
and because Infra/Olama was a Y Combinator company,
Right.
they if you work at a company that has Y Combinator, you get access to this special list.
Oh,
And the
okay.
special
Cool.
list shows you here are all the Y Combinator
I assume you
companies,
couldn't work
and
with them or something. Okay.
here are the benefits you get from those companies. And so Descript is like free for 2 years.
That's sweet.
And
And you're using it or not using it?
oh, I was when I was at
Oh,
Infra
right,
slash
right, right. My
Olama,
bad.
and then
Right, right, right.
and actually I didn't really use it that much. I wanted to, and I just never could quite. It was just at the point where they were starting to add the auto dubbing. You know, you could type in the
That's
text and it would
exactly what I
dub
was
it.
kind of talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Because I have used that here and there. It's literally for like one word or two. Because I may miss a word when I'm reading the
yeah,
teleprompter, but I don't want to record that 20 minutes over again because it is like the eighth or ninth
yeah,
time, and I'm like, oh,
yeah,
I'm just gonna replace this one word.
yeah.
And I have people don't notice. It seems fine.
Ah, thinking of that,
Yes.
have you seen 11 Labs
Hmm.
has a reader app for the iPhone, or maybe for other, maybe Android and iPhone,
It'll just read
iOS.
stuff to you.
So yeah,
That's
and
pretty
you get
cool.
to pick your voice, and it basically
Oh,
any website
oh,
or article, and it will read it to you, and you could subscribe to it, so it becomes kind of becomes your podcast.
yeah.
It's
That
pretty spectacular,
because I've
and
heard
it's
of is it
any
Notebook
voice you want.
LLM
Yeah,
or what? Have
yeah.
you tried? Yeah, we'll do that right now.
And yeah,
Yep.
so with that, for any article, you can also say, turn this into a podcast where it will have two voice. It'll pick two appropriate voices and have
Oh,
them giving you this super cheesy podcast. That's the one
like that.
time. Yeah,
Yeah, I understand the cheesy part,
yeah,
but I maybe without the cheese I'd be happier. But
yeah.
being able to have two
It's
voices though is actually
extremely
that's a
cool.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
And
a really cool idea.
so, I mean, I found some article about AI, and I had it. They have regular voices, and then they have celebrity voices, and so had it read to me by Maya Angelou, and it sounded amazing.
Oh, but presumably she's licensed this.
I guess
Hopefully,
so. Yeah,
this is their name. Yeah, so I
yeah.
think there have been legal cases already about
Oh
what was
yeah,
it?
Scarlett Johansson.
Uh, exactly who
Her.
it was. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yes, her
yeah.
is exactly what came to my mind. I
Right,
couldn't think of
right.
the actress's name. Sorry.
Yeah, no, these
All
are.
right.
I
Okay.
think they
Well, I
are
think we got
licensed, and
some.
it's
Yeah,
that is great. That is so much fun doing that.
that's a
So get
fantastic
that
pick.
that your next every post, and have it read to you by somebody.
Phenomenal. I love
Yeah,
it. All right.
yeah,
Well, thanks for the. Saw a couple of people in the chat there. Thanks, folks. We did see you
yeah.
there.
Thanks.
Stanley and Just Rise and Grind. Thanks for joining us. And I
All
think that's
right,
it.
shall
Should we
we
find the button?
find the button?
Yep.
Let's see if that didn't work. What about that button?
Not that one.